Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Almond, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Well, not too much, Mike. And this week we'll be talking about Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
But not just any Planeswalkers, not just, this is my favorite Planeswalker.
Right.
Her name is Elspeth. No, we're going to be talking about Planeswalkers that are relevant to our style.
Mm-hmm.
That's the style of symmetrical effects, group hug, chaos and stacks, effects that can threaten people and enable political things to happen. Those are my favorite kind of Planeswalkers, Mike.
Sure. And, I mean, to be fair, we are going to talk about Elspeth because Elspeth.
We are, because she's great.
Because she's the best.
She's just the best.
But yes, so it's funny that you mention all these things that Planeswalkers can do, and there are hundreds of Planeswalkers, but it's weird. It's you don't see them a whole lot unless you're talking about a Super Friends deck, but there's so much capability to them at the same time. So it's kind of weird to me that, you know, we're looking around and we're looking at all the deck lists, and it's not one of those things where the average deck has this many Planeswalkers in it. Like, if you were to go about, you know, how many card draw spells do I have? How many board wipes do I have? How many target removal spells do I have? And a lot of those are things that Planeswalkers can do, but the amount of Planeswalkers that actually see regular play in EDH, it's kind of limited. Why is that?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, I think that's because primarily, at least, they're very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
A Planeswalker is uniquely a permanent on the battlefield that not only can it be removed through spot removal or a board wipe, but it can also be attacked by creatures.
Right.
So just having that additional avenue that many decks will be able to take advantage of, because you know that not everyone's running all the spot removal, especially Planeswalker spot removal, that they should be running. But there's a lot of people running just incidental creatures that can swing in and blow out a Planeswalker. Most decks can do that, Mike.
That makes sense. It is a powerful effect that is very, very vulnerable unless you're building up the right board state. And if you're building up the right board state, then it almost feels a little win more to me at a certain point.
And that's the thing about a Planeswalker, right, is that it's not just that it's vulnerable. It's that it needs specifically to stick around for each of your turns for you to get the value that you need to get off of it, to get the minus abilities, and especially what we'll call often here the ultimate ability, which will be not all Planeswalkers have this, but many of them do. It's a very high negative loyalty cost that does something explosive. Many of these abilities are designed to put you way, way out ahead, or just straight up win the game or make someone lose the game. But they're also designed to be very difficult to get to. And by difficult, I mean you're going to need to add a lot of loyalty counters to them over many different turns before you're able to take advantage of these high-cost abilities. And because they need to be around for so many turns, that's just more turns for people to attack into them.
Absolutely. And you brought up a great point about all these high-powered abilities and their ultimates and all of these things and protecting themselves. So let's do a quick rundown, because Planeswalkers have exploded recently.
Ever since War.
Yeah, the War.
Like, wow, they doubled the number of Planeswalkers.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some that have come out since that are absolutely relevant, and there are some that not so much. It doesn't fit our format. But they've been around for a bit. So talk to me a little bit. Let's go into detail about Planeswalkers themselves. As Judge Alex takes us into our corner here, give me a crash course on Planeswalkers and how they work in Magic.
Absolutely, Mike. So we'll start with a 30-second history lesson. Planeswalkers are from Lorwyn sets, which was the fairy tale set before Eldraine. They have their own unique frame with that bulging border. Looks fantastic. A Planeswalker is a special kind of permanent that represents sort of its own entity within the game. It's often said that we, the players, are playing as planeswalkers when we're playing the game of Magic, summoning things to the battlefield under our control and things like that. And the flavor of a planeswalker is that we're bringing a friend, a fellow planeswalker, in with us into battle, and depending on how loyal they are to us, they'll stick around longer, they'll help us with stronger effects.
Right.
So what are some of these effects, and what do planeswalkers do? Let's do it quickly, but we're going to start very easy. So if you know what planeswalkers are, just start skipping ahead a little bit. I'm not going to be offended. It's fine. A planeswalker is a kind of permanent, and all planeswalkers are legendary planeswalkers. All right. That means that if you have 2 of the same legendary planeswalker, for example, 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors, then all but one of them will be put into the graveyard due to the legend rule. But there also used to be an older rule that we're not really going to talk about, where you may recall that's if you had 2 different planeswalkers, but they had the same name, for example, 2 different Jaces, then that would have the same effect as a legend rule. Thank goodness we don't have that problem anymore.
Yeah.
But let's do the construction of a planeswalker. So we're going to have the mana cost, of course, and its name, and its planeswalker type, which is telling us what kind of planeswalker it is, and its starting loyalty and its loyalty abilities. So loyalty is an effect that only exists for planeswalkers. A planeswalker is going to enter the battlefield with its starting loyalty in loyalty counters. That's going to be at the lower right corner, and it'll tell you how many loyalty counters are on the planeswalker. If the planeswalker is ever at 0 loyalty counters, then it'll go to the graveyard as a state-based action.
Okay.
Flavorfully, that's they've lost faith in you, and you can just say they died. They're gone. But they have loyalty abilities. Most of them have multiple loyalty abilities. Some of them have 1. But you can activate one of these loyalty abilities per turn at sorcery speed. So on your main phase, when you have priority and the stack is empty. And each of these loyalty abilities has a loyalty cost. But interestingly enough, most of these costs, a lot of the more interesting ones, are actually positive costs, which is something that we don't really see very much of. And that kind of can throw people off a little bit. But when we talk about a +1 ability or a +3 ability, that's the loyalty cost of that ability. It's the cost, I'm using scare quotes, of putting on loyalty counters onto the planeswalker. And likewise, if it's a negative ability, the cost is removing that many loyalty counters, and you can only remove as many as they have. So if you have a -12, you only have 6 loyalty counters. Well, you're out of luck. You're gonna have to work up slowly.
Right.
Planeswalkers uniquely, though, can also be attacked by creatures. When you're declaring your creature as an attacker or it enters the battlefield attacking, you can either choose a defending player or planeswalker. And if you choose a planeswalker, that player will become the defending player. And that's really all there is to it. I've probably gone long already, even though it's only been a few minutes. But Mike, that's the crash course in planeswalkers. 1 loyalty ability per turn, and they can be attacked.
I mean, it makes sense, though, because again, they've been in the game for a decent amount of time, so we've got a good semblance of an idea. I'll tell you,
2007.
I'll tell you this: I've never made the actual connection, even though they're literally called loyalty abilities. Of no, as soon as it runs out of loyalty, it's that planeswalker leaving, as opposed to the the planeswalker died in battle. That's why it goes to the graveyard. It's no, they left. They're gone.
Right. Planeswalkers flavorfully are very difficult to kill because they have an immortality with their Planeswalker Spark.
Yep.
So it was a big deal in war when Planeswalkers died, because usually they can't.
Right. Well,
yeah.
All right.
Usually they just planeswalk away.
R.I.P. Gideon. Sorry.
Rip.
Rip. So yeah.
Rest in peace.
Those are that's a rundown of Planeswalkers, the actual way that they work. And again, we're going to talk about some of the ones that could be used in, kind of our playstyle, as far as there's a lot of stacks effects on Planeswalkers. But there are some really good stuff, like, giving people the opportunity to untap, to draw, some of those group hug features as well, and some good political aspects. But before we do that, we're going to go to our, ooh, can I see that? And we're going to talk about some cards that are really underplayed. We each think that we're bringing something really interesting to the table, especially with our topic today. So if you want to grab them or any of the other cards we're going to talk about in the future, you can help us out in the process. So we've partnered with TCGplayer.com. If you're looking for any singles, sealed product, deck boxes, sleeves, playmats, really anything to spice up that game experience, you can go to bit.ly/EDH_social or click the link in our show notes. You don't pay anything extra, and you'll really be helping us out by buying all the things that you are going to anyway. Alex, why don't you start us off with a card that our listeners may be interested in picking up if they're trying to look into putting some more Planeswalkers into a deck?
Absolutely, Mike. I have a bit of a sleeper here, and I'm kind of breaking our rules. Usually we're trying to go for cards that are very seldom run, cards that are in under 1,000 decks. This one's in more. It's in 9,500 decks.
Okay.
But there's a reason for that. And that's because this card was in the Commander 2018 precons.
Oh, yeah, that'll help.
Yeah, I would be willing to bet that even though this card's in a bunch of decks, the vast majority of those are people's precon lists that they uploaded and then never changed or continued to run them. Mm-hmm. So we're going to pretend like this card is not played very often because it's not. And that card is Forge of Heroes.
Sure.
Forge of Heroes is a land, a non-basic land with tap, add colorless. And a second ability, tap, choose target commander that entered the battlefield this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and a loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. And this card is 44 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's not exactly a powerhouse of utility land. I would say that, in my opinion, if I had any decks, for example, like Mike's Read Over Repulsive deck, that have a planeswalker at the helm,
mm-hmm.
and you're not in too many colors, that this is probably worth a spot.
Sure.
Because unlike that Karn land where you can proliferate for 4, which is a great land, that's a lot of mana, and this is 0 or equivalent of 1 mana. And not only can you bump up your planeswalker, but if somebody else puts out their commander, you can give it a +1/+1 counter, or if it's a planeswalker, you give it a loyalty counter. That's just a nice little fun gift. And fun fact on this one, rest in peace, Gideon. If Gideon has transformed, if Gideon has changed its type to creature and it's still a planeswalker, it's a planeswalker and a creature, so it'll get both a +1/+1 counter and a loyalty counter.
I never thought of that. That's silly. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's like you said, it's one of those cards that's in a lot of decks, but how many times have you ever seen it played?
Never.
And especially if you're playing a deck that has a planeswalker at the helm, like, that makes sense. It makes sense to throw this in there, because it can be extremely spicy to combine with some other effects, proliferate, to where, hey, this thing that I thought was going to be able to ult maybe in 2 turns, well, maybe I can get close enough to where I can ult it next turn, something along those lines. And
yeah, you're willing to pay a lot of mana for proliferate effects,
mm-hmm.
which is just add 1 counter to everything. But if you have any one given planeswalker per turn, your commander, that's the most important one in your deck, presumably, then I think getting it for 1 mana is really good rate. Usually you're paying quite a bit more.
For sure. So let's talk about a card then that if everybody else doesn't want to run Planeswalkers, but you do. Let's talk about a card that's really good for gumming up the works. And, you apologized for using a card that was in more decks than normal for our Ooh, Can I See That? But you also helped me find this gem.
I did, and this one's a real gem.
Holy cow, this is terrifying.
Mike, I can't believe you picked a Stacks card. I'm so proud of you.
It's super weird. Let's talk about Teferi's Realm. We're super on flavor. It's got Planeswalker in the name. But this is an Enchant World card for 1 generic and blue. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, symmetrical effects, that player chooses artifact, creature, land, or non-aura enchantment. All non-token permanents of that type phase out. And just as a reference, while they're phased out, they're treated as though they don't exist. Each one phases in before its controller untaps during their next untap step.
That's right.
This is nuts. This is a nutty card.
We like to talk about cards like Nev's Disc and what is it, Chroma's Vengeance.
Yeah.
Board wipes that are so old that they don't know about Planeswalkers, so they don't destroy them. This is like that.
But here's the thing. Board wipes are something like Nev's Disc. That is a political.
I'm not
board
saying
wipe.
it's like a board wipe.
I know.
In the same school district.
What I'm saying here that makes this card super nuts and why I love it. Even as a stacks piece, I'm sitting here like I'm gonna buy 3 of these. Because
we've turned them.
Because it's a stacks piece, but it is everybody pick.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
And that's so
you can pick
silly.
What you want to phase out. And if you pick creatures or whatever, you can just wipe the board and your stuff is safe.
But here's where I'm sitting there saying, it's safe. All non-token permanents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to say creatures.
Maybe some of your Planeswalkers make some tokens.
Yeah, there's a couple that
maybe
do that.
A lot of Planeswalkers make tokens.
Yeah, and notably, and you're cutting to the point here. Nowhere on this card does it say Planeswalker.
Yeah, it's not on there.
So
nobody can make your board phase out if you're Super Friends.
If you're playing the Atraxa Super Friends deck or any kind of Super Friends deck, really, but how is this card not in there? And when I say not in there, it's in 149 total decks.
149 decks. Super Friends decks are really popular, and this card is nothing but political upside for Super Friends decks.
It's phasing. I think that
phasing confuses people.
I think that's the main reason. I think that's the one I'm going to go to.
A lot of people think that when things phase out, that they LCB and ECB, or that tokens stop existing when they phase out. Although in this case, that wouldn't be relevant,
right?
But they don't. That's how it used to work a long time ago. Anyway, we're not talking about phasing today.
No.
So those are our 2 cards. If those sound interesting to you, or any of the Planeswalkers we're about to talk about, Mike, where do they go?
Oh, they're going to go to bit.ly/EDH_social or click the link in our show notes. We're going to take a quick break for you to go ahead and grab, 4 or 5 of these from TCG Player. But when we come
how much
back,
is yours? Like $3?
So they're a little bit more expensive than that, but not by a lot.
Okay.
I'm kind of...
Mine's like pennies. You can get mine for 44 cents.
Yeah, that's...
Buy it. For your Planeswalker deck, buy it.
That's... You know what?
If it's a Planeswalker Commander, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
If it's Atraxa, then no.
Yeah.
But if it's Jessica, maybe so.
I like where you're going. So pick those up. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about some Planeswalker cards that we really care about. See you soon. All right, we're back, and we are going to talk about some Planeswalkers that fit into kind of our playstyle. That's things where it's political value, group hug value, symmetrical effects, stacks as well.
Stacks effects.
Okay, yeah. I'll tell you what, Alex. Why don't you start us off? I'll give you the option of talking about our favorite lady or going in a different direction.
Okay. Well, I talked about our favorite lady last time.
Yay!
So I'm going to start with our least favorite lady. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is the most popular Planeswalker in the entire format. Are you ready? It's Narset. Narset, Parter of Veils, is 1 blue for a legendary Planeswalker Narset starting loyalty 5. With the static ability, each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. Oh, why would you put that there? That's awful. We banned Leovold. Why would you do this? -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, Narset is one of the uncommon walkers from War. And if you didn't play War, this may seem strange to you. She only has 1 loyalty ability, and it's a -. So without proliferation or putting counters on, there's no possible way for her to get counters through her own volition.
Sure.
Which is probably a good thing because that static ability, Mike, yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah, this is not a card that this is a card that even when I do see it, it's just as likely that no one activates that ability. It's just like, no, this is here for other reasons. Sorry. Windfall.
Yeah, this is here to wheel, and then nobody draws any cards, and then you win the game because everyone discarded their hand.
Oh my gosh, it's
brutal.
It's such a rough card.
This is one of the most powerful. I think this is probably the most powerful stacks Planeswalker. If you're playing stacks and you're in blue because you're in stacks, you're playing Narset.
Yeah, it does.
She's restricted in Vintage, Mike. That's all you have to know about that.
I mean, she does one thing, but she does it real good. And woof, it is. Man, that's not fun.
I'm glad she can't be your commander. Let's just say that.
For good reasons.
For good reason. Mike, talk about someone nicer.
Let's talk about our favorite lady.
Elspeth,
Sun's Champion.
The Sun's Champion.
This is 4 generic, 2 white for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. +1 ability, create 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. We love anything that can protect itself when it's a Planeswalker. And 3 tokens is ridiculous.
It's better than anything else.
Yes.
Ever.
But at the same time, you also have the ability to -3, so she'll stay around and destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater.
That's the rattlesnake board wipe, Mike.
It's so good to have on a card, hey, I'm going to place this here. And if you have to blow everything up instantly, fine. If you don't, you still get to hold it to where you need to remove this from my board before it gets back to my turn if you're going to do anything big on your board. And
it's even more than that, right? It's your finger is on the button. When this comes out, this is 6 CMC. It's in white with 2 white pips. You're probably not playing this too much earlier than turn 5 or 6, right? So this is a Planeswalker that is coming out onto the board when the board is full. Bases are loaded. And she can just end the inning. Said, all right, everyone that's not a little guy, and that's White's thing, right? Is fighting for the meek. So all of the little tokens that you have, all the small utility creatures and hate bears you have will stay. Everybody's beaters are gone. And people don't want that to happen so badly. We talked about this during our rattlesnake episode, that you can use this even more than as a threatening threat. You can use it as, oh no, don't worry. As long as nobody messes with her, I'm not even going to wipe the board with her. I'm just going to make tokens. And everyone's like, whew, he's only making 3 tokens a turn.
I just want my token friends. Don't worry about me.
Yeah. And then you had the -7.
Yeah, getting an emblem is always a fun thing. You get an emblem with creatures you control get +2/+2 and have flying. You know, I feel like if you had a way to plus Elspeth to get lots of creatures out, and then an ability to make them stronger, and then give them evasion, that would be pretty effective. Oh, wait.
And we talked about this during the Rattlesnake episode, too. If she's still alive after you -7 her, you're making 3 creatures 3 power total on the +1. After her -7, you're making 3 creatures 9 power in the air, which is completely brutal, and no one can keep up with that.
Doubling Season is a scary card. And it just
no kidding. She'll get 6 off of her, and she enters with 8. Let's take a break from Planeswalkers for a sec to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about Doubling Season.
Oh, sure.
And then we'll talk about emblems real briefly. Doubling Season is this enchantment for a green. If 1 or more counters would be put on you or a permanent you control, you get double that many counters instead. If you would make 1 or more tokens, you get twice that many tokens instead. It's the classic doubler, and it's really, really good. And the way that it affects Planeswalkers is that a Planeswalker will enter with 2 times the number of loyalty counters.
Yep.
But its loyalty abilities are not effects, but costs. And because they're costs, they will not put additional loyalty counters on the Planeswalker when you pay for them.
Okay.
There are some exceptions. For example, Huatli, the Sun's Champion, or Huatli, Radiant Champion, whatever she is.
Yeah.
She has a loyalty ability, and some other Planeswalkers do, that when the loyalty ability resolves, it gives her more loyalty counters. That's an effect, and that is doubled.
Okay. That makes sense then.
Okay, so we have Doubling Season. It's great, but it doesn't affect the plus and the minus. Next thing is emblems.
Mm-hmm.
Emblems are really simple. They're objects, they're not cards, and when they are created, they exist in the command zone. Nothing can touch them. They're there for the rest of the game. Simple as that.
Gross. Let's put lots of things in there that you can't interact with at all, because it's too late. You had your chance.
Speaking of rattlesnakes, Mike, there was a really this card caused a big stink in Standard and a few other competitive formats.
Mm-hmm.
And it got banned in almost all of them.
Almost everything.
Standard, Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, Brawl, Historic. It's only legal in Commander and Vintage, and that's Oko, Thief of Crowns. And it's good in Commander for the same reason it was disgusting in all of those formats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his +1, which we'll get to. So Oko Thief of Crowns is 1 green/blue for a legendary Planeswalker Oko. Starting loyalty is 4, and he has a +2 creative food token, which is an artifact with pay 2, tap, and sack it. You gain 3 life. That's garbage. Nobody cares about that. But his +1 ability, and it is absurd to me that this is a +1.
Yeah.
And I think most people would agree. +1, target artifact or creature loses all abilities and becomes a green elk creature with base power and toughness 3/3. So, this is an incredibly powerful effect because if you do it to someone's commander, the only way that they can realistically get their commander back is by flickering it or sacrificing it and casting it back again.
Yep.
It is so difficult to deal with this because what are you going to do? There's no aura you can remove. Even if you remove Oko, that's not going to turn your commander back. That's not going to turn your big mana rock back into a mana rock. You're screwed. And then he has one more. -5, exchange control of target artifact or creature you control, and target creature an opponent controls with power 3 or less. I'm really mainly interested in the +1.
Yeah.
And, like, this is a doozy. You can really threaten people with this.
Let's talk about all of the 3 CMC effects that you can target a commander with to make that commander
and lock
useless.
It out. Yeah. They're mostly in white. And their effects like Banishing Light.
Right, Banishing Light. They're things that stick around. Like, let's talk about all the things that...
There are things that can be removed and then you get the commander back usually.
This is you have to stop this from happening, or you have to have a way to make your commander go away and come back.
Which is not easy.
Especially when it's
most people are not running, like, unless you're in an Aristocrats or Sack deck, most people are not able to kill their own commander on command.
This turns into someone plays Oko, uses it on you. Your new game is trying to find somebody to be your friend that you can swing a 3/3 at, or that they will swing something bigger than a 3/3 at you. So you can.
If you're a threatening player, if you're an arch enemy, nobody's going to help you with that.
No,
they're not going to block your 3/3.
No, this Oko is messed up. Oko's
there's a reason it's been banned in everything, and this effect is really good in Commander, but in these formats, like, you can just end the whole game with it.
I don't like Oko. I don't want to talk about Oko anymore. Let's talk about...
talk about Party Jace?
You know what? We can talk about Party Jace.
Party Jace! Jace Beleren. 1 blue. This is the OG. Legendary Planeswalker Jace, starting loyalty 3. +2, each player draws a card. Woo! What up? +2, each player draws a card. Mike, that is a good ability.
Yep.
I really like that. -1, target player draws a card. I don't like that one as much, but it's good that he has it.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't want everybody to draw a card. I get it.
Target player mills 20 cards.
Yeah.
So there's that. That's fun. But how about +2 target, or each player draws a card? That's a lot of value.
Yeah. And you know what? The hair sticking up in the card art, like, he here to party.
He looks a little bit intense in this art. I don't know.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Mike, after I so rudely interrupted you?
No, here's the thing. I love Party Jace. I was thinking about going to another... I was going to go to another Simic Planeswalker that does good things.
Good things.
Let's talk about Kiora.
Yay!
So, Kiora is a 2 generic and then Simic, so either a green or a blue for a 7 loyalty. Planeswalker.
Holy moly. Why does Simic get everything?
It has the static effect of whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. So this is just a 7 loyalty draw effect. Except for -1, untap target permanent. That's not target permanent you control. It's target permanent. And that can be a Gaia's Cradle. That can be a mana rock to get you some more mana. It can be somebody else's. It can be untapping somebody's creature so they can make a really good block. It can be a lot of things. Kiora is really good. The synergy is nice. I like that it's whenever I have a big creature enter the battlefield, I'm getting a benefit. But the actual ability is something that, hey, we can talk, we can make friends, we can do some deals here. Big fan of
the fact that you have 7 starting loyalty.
It's so ridiculous.
And she has good value on the table for 3 mana. You can legitimately afford to donate this untap and not be like, oh, I only have 1 left. No, you have 6 left. You're good.
Yeah. I can't believe that this is a -1 ability on a 7 loyalty Planeswalker. That's
Simic for you, Mike. Simic's value, for some reason, Wizards has decided that Simic gets to go to all the parties and be the prettiest princess of the sea and just draw all the cards and ramp all the lands and have a 7 loyalty Planeswalker that untaps any permanent for 3 mana. I'm so frustrated, Mike. Let's talk about something else.
Okay, what you got for me?
How about this classic one here? I'm gonna have you cut me and
yeah, you're good.
Decision. You know, I always like this one, Mike. How about Karn Scion of Urza? So Karn Scion of Urza is a 4-mana legendary Planeswalker. Karn, it's not a surprise, loyalty of 5. And this +1 is really neat. Reveal the top 2 cards of your library. An opponent chooses one of them. Put that card into your hand and exile the other with a silver counter on it. And then he has a -1. Put a card you own with a silver counter on it from exile into your hand. He also has a -2. Make a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So not really any ultimate, but a lot of utility.
Yeah.
And I love this. This is a card draw card in colorless that not only is letting you draw a card, but maybe you can strike up a deal with someone and say, hey, if you can give me the better of these 2, blah, blah, blah. Or even if they screw you, you're not that screwed because next turn you can get that back if it was really that good of a card.
If it's a really, really important card for you, right? Yeah.
And he can make tokens that become enormous.
Yeah.
Just enormous. I love this one, Mike.
It's a very it's a card with options. It's a Swiss Army knife as far as what you want to do. It is a Planeswalker that can protect itself. It's a Planeswalker that can make really big threats, and it's a absolute worst case scenario. 4 mana, draw a card, try and make a friend, exile another card. There's utility lands that get played that can't do that. You know? So it's neat. I like Karn.
Me too.
Let's talk
something worth noting about Karn is when these cards are exiled with silver counters on them, they have silver counters on them for as long as they're in exile.
Right.
Which means that if this Karn goes to the graveyard and then back to your hand and then back to the battlefield, you can use his -1 right away to grab a card that was previously exiled out of exile. Because Karn doesn't care that they're from an older Karn. All he knows is the silver counter. Those stay forever.
Yep. I'll tell you what. Do we want to talk about another Karn here, or do we want to pivot? Because there's a lot of Karn. There's a lot of Karn.
Is this the original Karn?
Well, we got Karn Liberated. We got...
That's the one.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Karn Liberated is one of those cards that I like, but there's enough stuff going on, and the numbers are so much higher than I'm ready for, that I have to do like a double take on math every time I see this card. So 7 generic for a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. It's +4...
It's what?
Is target player exiles a card from their hand. Karn's -3 is exile target permanent. And then I guess we'll call it an ult because there's not an emblem, but it's an ult. For, just a nice condensed -14 is restart the game, leaving in exile all non-aura permanents Restart the game, leaving in exile all non-aura permanent cards exiled with Karn liberated. Then put those cards onto the battlefield under your control.
This ultimate is completely ridiculous, Mike.
Yep.
But it's a -14.
Yeah.
So you would need to activate his +4 twice. And then activate his -14. So that would take 4 turns.
Well,
probably not going to happen.
Hold on. So turn comes out.
Yeah.
+4. Next turn +4 again. So on turn 3, if nobody interacts with it, yes.
Okay. So 3 turns after you put down a 7 mana.
Yeah. No,
we're not talking about the -14 because it's
despite the bonkers nature of it. Wow. But no, we're talking about it because -3 exile target permanent.
That is 3 of the most powerful words in the game. Like exile target permanent. That's anything.
It doesn't say non-land. It's just permanent. It's just something that exists.
And it is not coming back.
And you know what? A +4 that says target player exiles a card from their hand.
That's target player discards a card and then exiles. Like, that's hand attack. They choose the card, but they still have to exile a card out of their hand.
Right.
And you just went +4.
So now this thing is at a 10 loyalty, or you -3'd it earlier, so okay, now it's just at 7. Karn is really good for sticking around on the battlefield because it's really good at beefing itself up. You need to have permanent removal as opposed to a whole lot of attack.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And people don't like exiling cards from their hand. Oof. How about we pick another card that does some things that make people really miserable, Alex?
Make people really miserable?
Yeah.
How about Sorin Markov?
Fair enough.
So, Sorin Markov. Ooh. 3 black. For Legendary Planeswalker Sorin, loyalty is 4. +2, Sorin deals 2 damage to any target you gain 2 life.
Nope.
-3. Are you ready for this? Target opponent's life total becomes 10.
Yep.
What? That's strong even in 20 life formats. In this format, that's 75% of your starting life total. And he can do it right away. He doesn't even have to plus up. He can enter for 6 mana in that same turn before you have the chance to stop him from doing it. So even spot removal will not stop this. You have to counter the spell.
Yep.
Your life total becomes 10. That is devastating, Mike.
That's not damage dealt.
You lose that much life.
It's just lost. It's just gone.
Yeah.
It's
and then
so gross.
-7 is perhaps even more brutal. You control target player during that player's next turn. That's Mindslaver, baby.
Sorin's mean.
That is a disgusting card. You be careful with that one.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
As much as the Sorin -3 target opponent's life total becomes 10.
You can really threaten people with that.
You can. And at some points, it makes me very uncomfortable. But I've also seen I have infinite life now. Because I just can give myself an arbitrary amount of life. And you know what? Here's a way to deal with that.
This completely hoses any life gain deck. They're screwed.
Your life is now at 10. And thank you for playing. Sorin is rough. People like to gain life. You know what other thing people like to do in EDH a lot?
Not have their stuff messed with?
Oh, I was going to say tutor.
Oh,
Let's talk about an uncommon, which still seems weird to me. Ashiok, Dream Render, 1 generic, and then 2 Dimir. So a blue and a black, 2 black, or 2 blue. For a 5 loyalty planeswalker with the static ability that says spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library.
Oh yeah.
We're not talking Aven Mind Sensor. We're talking no. It doesn't get to happen.
This is the same CMC as Opposition Agent. Mm-hmm. It came out 2 years prior, and I don't know. That is a painful ability. It's better than even Mind Sensor.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the other part of it that makes it even better after that.
Yeah.
We're hosing people that like to tutor. We're also hosing people in a growing format of, I like to use my graveyard as part of my library. Well,
not anymore, you don't, Buster.
Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Each!
That's Ashiok's -1.
On a 5 and they loyalty.
Have 5 loyalty. It's holy moly. This card is only $1.50, Mike.
And it's an uncommon. And the craziest thing about this is that I think of all of the decks that like doing a lot of graveyard recursion, right?
Mm-hmm.
They even made it to where Ashiok doesn't hit you if you're one of those decks, if you're casting it. Because it's
not
opponents.
Only are you allowed to tutor, but you're also not getting your graveyard exiled.
It's so
devastating
to people that are trying to use either of those abilities.
And that's just it. What if somebody just tutored something to the top of their library with their mystical tutor, right? You play out Ashiok, -1. That card they tutored is going into their graveyard and then being exiled, and they're never seeing it again.
Bye forever.
Holy moly, Mike. Fun fact, Ashiok has no gender. I just think that's cool.
Yeah. Good job, Wizards.
Who else should we talk about?
Oofa doofa.
I have one.
Go for it.
Now, when I say its name, you're going to think, why would you pick that one? Because this card is famous for another reason, or should I say infamous. That's Teferi Temporal Archmage. Loyalty 5. And Teferi Temporal Archmage can be your commander, which is a special clause that some Planeswalkers have.
They sure do.
And yeah, here's the +1. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and the other on the bottom of your library. So, you'll scry. And then draw a card, right? And then there's the -1, which this is used in CEDH decks to instantaneously win the game. But what if you wanted to, spread the love around? -1. Untap up to 4 target permanents, Mike.
That's a lot.
Up to 4 target permanents. You can set someone up and say, hey, remember that deal we had? There you go, buddy. 4 permanents untapped. That's a lot of power to throw around, Mike.
Well, even the ability to untap 3 of your things and one of somebody else's,
or one of everyone's.
Yeah, targeting stuff. Always nice to have some variability and options. And something where it's just 4 target permanents. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yep. You could, untap 4 your own lands if you feel like it, or feeling generous, spread it around. You got a lot of options. Then he has a -10 that you're never going to get, except with the infinite combo that I was just talking about, which, if you care, is the Chain Veil and blinking the Chain Veil to get infinite abilities. -10, you'll get an emblem with you may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalkers you control on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant. You're never going to get that without that infinite combo, so don't worry about that. It's the -1 that we're talking about. And again, if you're running this card, especially if you're running it as your commander, you need to be ready for the, oh my god, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Because this card has a reputation, even if you're not planning on using it like that, Mike.
It has a well-established reputation for very good reason. But
all you have to do is say, I'm not running the Chain Veil.
Yep. And frankly, the second that you say that, there should be
like, oh.
Everybody's shoulders will sink about 1.5 inches.
Because this card does not do anything without the Chain Veil.
Yep. I love the untap purpose, but yes,
you're
great. Right.
Yeah.
Do we talk about the Big Daddy?
Big Daddy, Nico Bolas Planeswalker?
Yeah. Holy cow. So 4 generic, blue, black, red. So that is an 8 CMC for a 5 loyalty. Planeswalker.
Yeah, but those abilities, though.
Yeah, so +3, destroy target non-creature permanent.
Yeah, that's a pretty good rattlesnake.
That is insane. This is a +3, destroy most important land.
And then he'll go to 8.
Yup. Or, maybe you want to, maybe the creatures are the things that's actually an issue. So you can -2 and just gain control of target creature.
Permanently.
Doesn't say until end of turn. Doesn't say as long as Nico Bolas is on the battlefield.
Control,
Nope.
It's forever.
It's super bad. It's -9. Nico Bolas, Planeswalker, deals 7 damage to target player. That player, or a target player or Planeswalker. That player or that Planeswalker's controller discards 7 cards, then sacrifices 7 permanents. That's a -9.
You're not going to hit it.
This person
doesn't hit
it. They don't get to play.
Yeah.
They don't get to play.
But don't worry about that. We're not talking about the -9. That's if you hit it, great, you win. Mm-hmm. You're not going to.
I hope not.
You're threatening people with the destruction. You're threatening people with gaining control of their creatures. This is an absolutely brutal Planeswalker to have on the battlefield. So we got another Teferi. Teferi's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Teferi, Master of Time. 2 blue, legendary Planeswalker Teferi, starting loyalty 3, and the static ability, you may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn, anytime you could cast an instant.
Yeah.
Right, so that's, if you recall, the -10 emblem that you had to get from the old Teferi, and now you just start with it.
Yep.
So this +1 that you can use once a turn on everyone's turn, draw a card, discard a card. Holy moly. That's looting, right? Draw and then discard. Yeah. So you loot 1 4 times in a round, and you add 4 loyalty.
Seems good. Sure.
That's pretty good. How about something that we actually care about, and that's a threat? And this card can threaten with the best, because this card can threaten at instant speed. And as we said in our Rattlesnake episode, if you can threaten at instant speed, that's the real Rattlesnake right there.
Yeah.
-3, target creature that you don't control phases out. When they declare it as an attacker at instant speed, you can phase it out.
Bye.
It's no longer in the game. It comes back on their next untap step. You can phase a blocker out to force damage through. You can phase out maybe a creature that triggers on the beginning of their main phase of their combat. They don't get the trigger. There's so many things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Phase out their mana dork. Now they don't get mana that turn.
When we talk about the not being able to ult very easily on things.
Oh, this one can ult quite a bit easier.
It sure can, because being able to add +4 on a go-around is pretty good.
+1 4 times, yeah.
So you would expect its ult ability to be, decent. Like, it would not to be overpowered because, think about how easy it can do it. How about if it's...
This is blue.
Yeah, think about how a -10 ult for take 2 extra turns after this one.
Did you just say Time Stretch, which is a 10 mana spell? Mm-hmm. Or is it 8 mana? It's a lot of mana.
It's a lot of mana. But here's the other thing to keep in mind.
8 blue.
It says take 2 extra turns after this one on a Planeswalker that can activate on other people's turns. So it's not a when it gets back to me and I have 10 loyalty, I'll do the thing. It's a when it has 10 loyalty, do the thing.
Right. So let's say it's the player before you's turn or the player, across the way. You can just insert yourself and take 2 turns, and then another player takes their turn, and then you take your turn again. Like, this is so brutal, Mike. The amount of value that you can get off of a Planeswalker that can use an ability on other players' turns is kind of crazy.
I hate it. I don't. You know what? For all of the busted things that Planeswalkers can do, and that those abilities can be pretty busted, I think my only issue with this Teferi is the fact that they printed it on like 7 different cards in the same set. So there was this confusion when it came out as far as like, oh, I got Teferi. Which one? The Master of Time. Yeah, which one? But other than that,
the Master of Time with the rings.
Yeah, no. Okay, great. How many? Which it's such a cool card as far as doing interesting stuff and having power. And you know what? I've got like 3, and I think I run one of them. And I should really look into that in the future.
If you're in a blue deck and you have creatures and you can protect this, this is some extremely powerful control. You have a legitimate chance, even without doubling season, of activating this ultimate. And that's really scary. This card's quite strong.
I no longer have a Talrand deck.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be a terrible person, Teferi would have to go into it.
Of course.
Because, wow. Being able, even just the ability to being able to loot, to find all of the cantrips and counter spells. Oh.
Every turn.
Rough.
And if you have a top on the field... Don't even get me started, dude.
I moving on. Let's talk about Nissa Worldwaker, because yay! We're back to green. We're back to friendly stuff.
Green.
Everything's fine. So this is
everything's not fine. Nissa and Chandra broke up because the writers decided that Chandra wasn't gay enough for Nissa, which is absurd.
I don't understand half of this stuff.
I hate it. They belong together, Mike.
Maybe in Netflix series when that comes out, and well, I'll believe it when I see
Wait, I heard they were adding new characters to the Netflix series. They're not bringing back the current ones.
Well, I'm less happy to talk about this then. 3 generic and 2 green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker. +1, target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with trample. It's still a land. Cool.
Great. Yep.
Other +1. Untap up to 4 target forests. Excuse me?
So Arbor Elf has this ability, tap and untap target forest. How about untap up to 4 target forests? So you can untap a bunch of your forests. Maybe there's another player who untaps some of their forest. I don't know. Just untap a bunch of forests. You have options. You're untapping 4 forests, Mike.
Yep. And here's the thing. I totally understand that we don't talk about ults on Planeswalkers that often because, reasons. This is in green. This is one of my favorite ults in Magic, just because it seems bonkers.
This is so silly.
-7. Search your library for any number of basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Those lands become 4/4 elemental creatures with trample. They're still lands.
So silly.
I love that ult. I love the idea of, I'm just going to keep untapping my lands. I'm going to keep untapping my lands. I'm going to keep untapping my lands. Because here's the thing. Nissa Worldwaker is one of the planeswalkers that I have in a couple of decks. Because I love untapping lands. I love value. Especially if I get to do it 2 turns. Even just the 1 turn. Great. This is a 5 CMC spell that I'm going to untap 4 targets for. Neat.
Yeah.
But I've had this card out with 7 loyalty before and went, I don't remember.
Want to keep her out.
I don't remember how many basic lands I have left in the deck. It's probably safer for me to just get those forests untapped again. Man, I like Nissa a lot.
Yeah, Nissa has a lot of great cards. Here's one that's perfect for its colors, but not quite as friendly as Nissa. How about Dovin Hand of Control?
Yep.
Which is 2 and Azorius, which is hybrid white-blue. For a legendary planeswalker, Dovin, loyalty 5. And he has the static ability, artifact, instant, and sorcery spells that your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast. That's a stacks effect, or a tax effect, if you will. That's going to make them very mad because they won't be able to cast their spells on curve, which is good for you because now your opponents are all slowed down. -1, until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent and opponent controls. So, wow, we've got some options here. Number 1, you can basically point at something and say, wow, that's scary. What do you plan on doing with that next turn? And they say, attacking someone who isn't you. And you say, exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen. Here's your next option. Somebody has something on board and they're in a situation where they're going to lose it. Maybe there's a pyrohemia. Maybe they're forced to attack with like a forced combat deck, but it's a utility creature. They don't want it to attack. There's a lot of different things that could happen. But this is going to prevent all damage that would be dealt to that creature, combat and non-combat, until your next turn. So for any burn effect, for any combat effect, that creature now has impunity, which is a very nice political option to have, Mike.
It is nice. And you know what? It's a stacks piece, but it's like I'm okay with that kind of stacks piece. If you're going to make things cost a little bit extra, okay. If you're
usually this is not the only tax effect you're running.
That's the problem. But you know what?
This is the only one you're running.
Yeah. I kind of like the reverse. It's not quite a rattlesnake, even though it is, because you can use it that way. Where it's
it's like a Mazavith.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And it's not an instant speed Mazavith, but you still get to have that conversation, and that's always nice.
Say let's make the call right now. Do you feel like that's going at me or what? And what are they going to say? If they say it's going at you, you're gonna silence it. It's not going to attack.
It's the most passive form of forcing the issue that I can think of.
That's the beautiful thing about maze style effects. Let's talk about. I think we have another Teferi here.
Teferi is very present.
This one is remarkably popular and very high in utility. I think everyone knows about this one. This is Teferi, Hero of Dominaria for 3 white blue. And it's loyalty 4 for a legendary Planeswalker Teferi. He has +1 draw a card at the beginning of the next end step, untap up to 2 lands. Yeah, that's pretty great.
It's nice to be able to play out your turn and then say, by the way, at the beginning of the next end step, I'm going to go ahead and put up counterspell mana. Don't worry about me.
Something that's relevant is it doesn't say 2 target lands and it doesn't say 2 lands you control.
Nope.
So you'll choose 2 lands on the battlefield and untap them both. You can untap lands that your opponents have that don't normally untap. That's just good. Good stuff. Untap a Mazavith, see what happens. Who knows? -3. This one's the rattlesnake, right?
Yeah.
Put target non-land permanent into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. Tucking a permanent, Mike, is sometimes even more devastating than destroying it, because this destroys indestructible.
Yeah.
This stops anything that would normally prevent something from being removed other than hexproof and shroud.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Anything else, it's going to be a while before you get it back. Holy
Can't be sacrificed, doesn't matter.
Nope.
Doesn't matter. It's positive. You can tuck a commander and then it has to go to the command zone.
Yep.
For -3.
Which is nice.
And then -8. Holy moly, if you get here, I think you win. You get an emblem with whenever you draw a card, exile target permanent an opponent controls. If they let you get here, they deserve to have their stuff exiled. Come on.
I mean, I think unfortunately that is kind of just the calling card for all Planeswalkers with an ult. If you get there, you deserve what's happening to you.
Unless it's a Super Friends deck, in which case it's really picking the best of a bad bunch.
Like, which one of these things is going to kill me?
Right. You're so few things to blow up a bunch of Planeswalkers, and if they're protecting them, it's really just like whack-a-mole, and unfortunately you might have to let something like this that doesn't technically win them the game on the spot, even though it's going to be the most brutal thing ever. And they're going to exile all of your shit. Like,
sure. See,
awful.
When you were talking about, let's move on to another Teferi here that's really popular.
You thought it was another Teferi.
I thought you were going to talk about the one that's banned in Pioneer and Historic, Teferi Time Reveler. 1 generic, 1 white, 1 blue.
Teferi with a 3.
Say again?
That's That's the shorthand that people use, is Teferi with a 3 instead of an E.
Oh.
CMC 3. Baby Teferi.
I like that. I did not know that.
Because there were 2 Teferis out in the same set.
Well, there we go. I learned something. Yeah. Thank you. I learned something else, is really where we're at.
Okay.
But for Loyalty Planeswalker, that says each opponent can cast spells only at any time they could cast a sorcery. Hey, there's a Teferi creature that does that. That's always good.
It's pretty brutal.
But you know what? That Teferi is better because it allows you to play creature spells as if they had flash. Oh, wait. +1 on Teferi Time Raveler. Until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. Oh.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. And then
you can board wipe at instant speed.
Yeah, it's pretty nice to just be like, okay, we're going to see what happens. Good luck.
Everyone's like, oh my god, what sorcery they're going to cast? Yep. Oh my god.
And then always the fun spell of, or the excuse me. And then always, you gotta like when the minus ability is something that it can activate immediately.
Yes.
Return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. Draw a card, and that's a -3 ability. That is for anybody. So if you want to blink something in kind of a weird way and also get a card out of it, great. If there is something that is a problem and needs to go away, also great. Teferi is very present for what we want to do, which is a lot of manipulating the board state and being able to make deals all over the place. It's almost like being able to travel through time is like nifty or something.
Right. The interesting thing about this -3 is like flickering your own things as being an option. If you have any like super critical mana rocks, it's mana rocks that tap for more mana than they cost to put into play.
Yep.
Like a Soul Ring. If you -3 and bounce your Soul Ring, draw a card and replay it, you just cast this Planeswalker for white, blue, and drew a card.
Yeah.
That's how good this Planeswalker is.
And then it sticks out there and says, by the way, I'm still going to remain here, and everyone is always playing at sorcery speed.
White, blue, draw a card, and also each opponent can only cast spells when they could cast a sorcery. For 2 mana, you get that whole package. That is a lot of value.
It's pretty.
If you have a Soul Ring in play,
it's pretty gross. Let's be real about it. It can do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. Ob Nixilis the Hate Twisted, 3 black, legendary Planeswalker Nixilis, loyalty 5. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Ob Nixilis the Hate Twisted deals 1 damage to that player. -2, destroy target creature, its controller draws 2 cards. So you blow something up, you donate 2 cards,
sure,
and you hit that player for 1.
Yeah.
Now, when I saw this card, I'm like, you know what that would go great in? My new Belbay deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're running Belbay and you like Gripug, I realize that's a vanishingly small number of you, but who knows? I did it. Now you have a card that can spot remove something and draw them 2 cards. It's kind of like Arcane Denial.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like that. So here's a question then.
Yeah.
You said this would fit really well in Belbay.
Yes.
Is it gonna get a slot in there?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
And that's specifically because of the double synergy for me.
Yeah.
Is number 1, it's spot removal, which is great. And it also draws other players' cards, which is great. But that's just group hug and value.
Right.
It's whenever an opponent draws a card, Ob Nixilis deals 1 damage to that player. If Belbay sees an opponent lose life, an opponent of mine lose life, then on the next post-combat main phase, the active player is going to get double colorless for each opponent that has lost life that turn.
Right.
So if I'm handing out some cards with some card draw effects like this, that just generated me 2 mana. So this ability now reads, -2, destroy target creature, its controller draws 2 cards, loses 2 life, and you add 2 mana.
Yep.
So that's some value.
Absolutely.
I mean, listeners, what's your favorite Planeswalker? Like, what do you like about Planeswalkers? Do you like the rattlesnake style options that we've highlighted today? Tweet at us. Tell us about some of the Planeswalkers you like.
And you had gotten into something when you were talking about Ob Nixilis that I want to touch on a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So you said that Omnixilus was a card that when we were doing the research for this episode, you looked at it and went, wow, this should absolutely, like, this could go in Belbay, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How likely do you think that is to happen?
How likely do you think it is for me to put that card in Belbay?
Yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely, Mike. Normally, when I'm identifying a Planeswalker that's synergistic with my deck, the main issue is that I probably tend not to include it because so many Planeswalkers that are strong are also very expensive because they're usually printed at rare or mythic.
Sure.
They're very splashy cards. Obnixilus the Hate Twisted is an uncommon. So this card is 30 cents. And it has very high synergy with my Belbay deck. As I said, that's for 5 mana. Can -2 immediately. 5 mana, destroy a creature, donate 2 cards. That player loses 2 life, and I add 2 mana. So really, I only paid 1 black for that, which is 1 black. That's pretty good rate
really
for this.
Spicy.
It's very synergistic with Belbay, in my opinion. I think that we're going to see it in there.
Okay.
The deck needs a lot of help, though. It needs a lot of draw.
Sure.
I'm trying to get some cards in there, trying to trade for some cards, and that's just part of the process, right? Of building a deck is just making it slowly better. But why do you? What brings that up for you?
So
including
it's part of what we talked about before. This is a card that you thought of Belbay as you were researching Planeswalkers that specifically do the things that we're looking for, right?
Right.
And then there was this epiphany moment of, oh, this could work in that really well. And then it's I can make that go in there because it synergizes with so many of the things that you're trying to do. And I think that's part of why we don't see Planeswalkers as often, because unless the deck is a Super Friends deck, which is the grain of salt to take with everything that we've said so far.
Yeah.
What you're using this for, this card, this Teferi, this Nicobolus, this Sorin Markov, you're using it typically for one ability or one thing that you're doing if you're putting it in there, unless it's just the perfect square peg into a square hole situation. Like what you're talking about with Omnixilus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of why I'm a little bummed out I don't see them more, because it's such an interesting card type. They literally created a new type of permanent, and I don't know. Like I said, how many decks do you have that have more than one Planeswalker in them?
Well, got my Kinesis Interior deck is 2.
Okay.
It has the Warrior Poet Huatley and Best Girl Elspeth.
Mm-hmm.
Then we got Emrakul deck has both of the Ugins and the good nice Karn.
Okay.
The one that draws cards.
Sure.
My Stacks deck doesn't have any. I took out the 5 minutes of Teferi, even though it was very nice. That deck just it's rough to...
Sure.
It needs a lot of different things to work, so I just had to remove it. Most of my other decks, I have Labman Jace in my Nin deck. That's 1. And I don't have any Planeswalkers in either my Vanifar or my Sekawar decks. So more than one Planeswalker, 2 decks out of 7.
Right. And for me, I've got a bunch. We're going to call the amount of decks that I currently have 15, because there's a lot of moving and shaking on some pieces. Sure. And how many that's actually going to turn into, I don't know yet. But I apologize. I let's say that I have about 15 decks right now with all of the boxes and the different, tuning up that I'm doing with a couple of decks and breaking some things down to build more. One of the things that's kind of weird is I think I'm at 2, maybe 3 that have more than one Planeswalker in them. And the ones that you talked about, like, especially for your Emrakul deck, like, you've got Karn and you've got Ugins. Yeah. You've got some of these cards that are ridiculously powerful.
Right.
And that's why they're in there, because of the actual, colorless identity.
The synergy is extremely high.
Exactly.
Like, new Ugin discounting by 2, and it makes me blockers, and it draws me cards, and it removes permanence. Like when you have a Planeswalker that synergizes with more than one of its abilities, it's pretty good. That's really what you want to see.
It's really good. And it's even in that situation, I feel like most people, if they look at a Planeswalker and they say, ooh, this can do this and this in this deck that I have. But people can attack it, but it's vulnerable. So you know what? I'm just going to use this other thing instead. And that kind of bums me out because I really like Planeswalkers. I like seeing them on the battlefield, even if it's not on mine, just because it's another dynamic. It's another, for all intents and purposes, it's another player in the game to both attack and worry about. And you know what? I want to see more Planeswalkers. Maybe that's something that I'll put more thought into for our Thursday night streams for our cardboard combat. I'll bring some more Planeswalkers to the table when I have an opportunity.
Well, Josh Lequoy from the Command Zone has an interesting outlook on Planeswalkers, especially Planeswalkers as commanders. And that's that because they are a diversion in combat, because they can be attacked by creatures, it's almost like that combat didn't happen to you. So it's almost like you gained that much life.
Yeah.
Right? And the more Planeswalkers you have, the more, I don't know if I'd call them red herrings, but they're definitely, they're an easy target.
Yeah.
And that easy target prevents you from being attacked directly, because if you have Planeswalkers, in my experience, it's very unlikely that you'll be attacked directly. It's far more likely they'll try to blow up the Planeswalker.
Well, they're a more imminent threat than your life total of going from 36 to 30.
Well, over the course of a game, if you have more than a few Planeswalkers resolving, that's combat that's happening that is not reducing your life total.
They're almost like being able to play walls that are more interesting, that people can actually target.
Right.
I don't know. I like them. I do think that they slow down games a little bit, just because it's more, it's more threats, it's more threat assessment, and it's like you said, it's this weird way where it's protecting your life total because other people are attacking it instead. It's a nice decoy that can be very efficient and can be very helpful, but I kind of dislike the fact that that's how I think about it. So I'm gonna try and resolve that thinking and start finding ways to put more Planeswalkers into decks, because they're nice. Cool. They're flavor-wise, it's just so fun. It's like, think about it. I'm Mike, and you know what? I'm going to team up with Teferi and Chandra, and we're going to do some cool stuff. Like, I think I'm going to lean into that on the next deck that I build, because...
Cool.
Yeah. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us on our walk through all of the different planes and the Planeswalkers that mean something to us because of the playstyles that we have. Alex, where can people find you on socials if they have any questions about Planeswalkers or any of the decks that you're thinking about putting Planeswalkers into?
Yeah, Mike, they can tweet me directly at Lappermedic, Lapper Medic, or you can email me at alex@edhrec.com.
And if you want to buy any of the cards we talked about, deck boxes, sleeves, etc., you can support us by going to bit.ly/EDH_social. If you have any questions or comments for us, follow us on Twitter at EDH_social, or email us at thesocialcontractedh@gmail.com. If you want to see us play with some of these cards and some other really nice people in the Magic community, you can follow us at twitch.tv/thesocialcontractpod, and we do cardboard combat streams on Thursday nights. Times are a little bit flexible because we're talking with lots of people all over the planet, but follow us there, and hopefully you'll get to see us do some cool stuff with Magic. We'll see you there, and we'll talk to you next week.